Call the meeting to order. Before we have a time of reflection, I just wanted to mention the great effort that every employee at JEA did during this hurricane. It was incredible effort, and it's amazing what a group of people can do under very stressful situations. And I give Jay, your team, and from the top to the bottom employee, just a special thank you. It's amazing to see people out in the field with the dedication and commitment. And Jay, you should be complimented, and thank you.
Thank you.
With that, we'll start a time of reflection. Start the meeting with the adoption of the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes. Safety briefing and values moment. Jason, before you start,
Nope, Jason's on.
Okay.
Line. Howard's going to get the next one.
Okay, yeah. Jason?
Hey, Chairman, members of the board, good morning. My name is Jason Hutchinson, Director of Information Governance. I've been with JEA for 12 years. Our team responds to records requests, subpoenas, and discovery, and manage the overall life cycle of records and information. Safety is a core value at JEA, and all attendees are encouraged to review the relevant safety instructions on the screen and in today's materials. For our values moment, I'd like to tell you about Crazy George. Even if you do not know who Crazy George is, you know his contribution. You've seen it or participated in it. October 15th, 1981, Crazy George invented the wave. Oakland A's Stadium playoff game against the Yankees. In the book How, the author documents how Crazy George got an entire stadium to do this first ever wave. And the author asked Crazy George, "Did you coerce these people?" And he's like, no, I didn't do that. "Did you entice them? Did you give them each $20? He said, no. "Did you hide the ball? Did you not share your idea and just ask them to go along with you?" And he said, no. And the author asked, how did you do it? How did you get an entire stadium, tens of thousands of people, to share in your vision? And he said, they had to believe. I had to be open about my intentions. We had to have common goals. They needed to know my vision and feel as if they were contributors, that they were part of the game. And when Crazy George first started the wave, it went through only a few sections and then died. And he beat his drum and he got the people in those first few sections to start booing. And that boo created attention to them and his mission. And the next time they attempted it, it went through a third of the stadium and then died. And the people booed louder and he beat his drum louder and he tried it again. And the next time it went through the stadium and through the stadium, and the energy and excitement of that wave didn't just stop when it ended, it continued throughout the entire game. It happened because he was transparent and because people trusted him. In 2021, Jay sent an email that probably no one remembers, but I remember it because it was very important. It was the first time I'd ever remember a leader at this level embracing transparency and openness. And transparency is not just good for government, it's good for every business. People want to be led by authentic leaders. You lose people if you do not have authenticity and ethics. Moral leadership comes through truth, transparency, authenticity, and it creates trust. Words and how we conduct ourselves matter. Moral leaders create meaningful connections and people feel more connected. I feel it. What Jay, Jody, and the entire leadership team are doing, what you as a board are doing. You're building an organization that allows waves to happen. And I'm so appreciative of the conversations of respect, courtesy, and integrity, especially at this moment. Respect and integrity don't just happen. They're built on trust and transparency on how we do things. And that creates long-lasting waves. Thank you for this values moment, Mr. Chairman.
Very impressive presentation. Thank you. With that, I'll hand it over to Michael Boland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's a tough act to follow. I appreciate that. I want to talk about Hurricane Ian very quickly, just to follow up on your comments. I suspect when the power goes out, the first thing they do is reach out to JEA. Well, I can assure you the second thing they do is reach out to the city councilman or council member. And I did receive early on an email from a gentleman who said, oh, here we go, my power went out, blah, blah, blah. And sheepishly, a couple hours later, he wrote back, oh, it's back on now. So the responsiveness was really appreciated. And secondly, twice a day, the council members during the heat of the storm had teleconference calls on the status reports. And Jay was at the vast majority of those meetings letting us know what was happening in his area. And that's really important because it allowed us to communicate that message to our constituents. I really appreciated Jay's involvement in that process. The CEA collective bargaining agreements, as you well know, probably are going through council right now. I want to thank Ms. Mouse and the team that came to visit with us individually to let us know and understand what took place in that process. Jay attended the Rules Committee meeting, which I chaired the other day. He found it a little more probably happier than he thought it would be, but normally we try and keep those meetings light when it's possible for us to do that. But it sailed through both that committee and the finance, and it's on the consent agenda. They are on the consent agenda for tonight's meeting, so I fully expect that they will sail through nicely. Last, as I read through the tome of action items for today, I saw time and again, as I should have seen, reference to the Office of General Counsel, the reference to the Council Auditor's Office in terms of advising and reporting. I do appreciate that is incorporated within the resolutions and action items we're taking up today because I think it's important for people to appreciate the parent company of JEA and its role in this process. And I thank you for that time, sir.
Michael, I appreciate what you and all the council have done and made our job easier through this transition period. And I think we've got to build trust between us now, and you have a lot to do with that. Thank you.
Did also, actually, I should offer, met with a couple of union representatives as well, and they shared much of what Jason just did in terms of their confidence in the relationship between management and the working folks. Thank you.
So comments from the public. Logan Cross.
Hello, my name is Logan Cross. I'm the chair of the Sierra Club of Northeast Florida. I'm also a member of the JEA Stakeholder Advisory Committee. I'm a resident of San Marco, and I want to thank you for giving me a moment to talk to you today about some of the things that we would like for JEA to do and a little bit about why. I will not restate what our recommendations are to JEA for its next integrated resource plan because we've already delivered that to you a couple of times and we'll be glad to make it available to you. But the overall purpose in trying to get JEA to transition from heavy dependence on fossil fuels for energy generation to renewable energy is ultimately we would like the city of Jacksonville to commit to operate on 100% renewable energy.
I think you want to turn your microphone on.
I don't know if I should go back, but
We heard you, I heard you.
But our primary or ultimate goal is to get the city of Jacksonville to commit to operating on 100% renewable energy by the year 2050. 12 other cities in the state of Florida have already made that commitment, mid to large cities. They include Tampa and St. Pete. They include Orlando. They include Tallahassee, Gainesville. And We feel that Jacksonville should make a similar commitment. It would not only put Jacksonville on a trajectory towards a clean energy future, but it also would signal to the state and the nation as a whole that Jacksonville embraces its role in the climate change phenomenon and wants to do its part in reducing its footprint. All right, and Council Bowman, if you'll take that back to the City Council, I'll appreciate it. But at any rate, we feel that that's why this next coming JEA Integrated Resource Plan is so important. Currently, JEA has 1.5% renewable energy and is highly dependent on a coal-fired power plant. So it has a long way to go in terms of moving in that direction, but we feel that this next integrated resource plan can put JEA on a trajectory towards transitioning to renewable energy sources and away from dependence on fossil fuels. If that plan is sufficiently, I'm hesitate to use the word progressive, but if the plan is moving in that direction and shows that JEA is on a trajectory towards going to 100% renewable energy eventually, it'll give us something to go back to the City Council and give the City Council the confidence to pass such resolutions similar to what other cities have done. We want you to, I guess this illustrates that JEA is in a very pivotal role in the community. What JEA does has a heavy influence on what the city does in the region. So I would strongly encourage you that if the JEA planners come back to you with a integrated resource plan that puts it on that trajectory, we strongly encourage you to support that plan. And I'm certainly hopeful that they will do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Bud, Para?
Good morning. I'm Bud Para, and I'm here for the St. John's Riverkeeper. And first, I'd like to thank you. I know these are complicated issues, and we appreciate your volunteering your time and your energy to work on these things. And then secondly, I'd like to thank the JEA staff. I've been working on this Integrated Resource Plan Advisory Group, and of course, I've worked on a few of those in the past. The staff has been great. They've been very patient with our questions, and would you please explain that to us for the third time? And they've been responsive to our request to say, would you look at this and would you look at that? They're doing a good job on this. And so what I'm here to ask you for is that you spend some time on it. The results of this work that the JEA staff and with our input, it's taken a lot of time and it's really complicated. And I would just encourage you to do a workshop or two to let them have some time to explain it to you, as opposed to taking 10 or 15 minutes when you've got 20 other things on your agenda. So when that comes to you, which probably won't be till early next year, I would just encourage you to have a workshop or three so that you can understand the questions and the decisions that the board is going to make as to what JEA does in the future. Thank you.
Bud, thank you for all your work and appreciate it. Yeah, what you're doing with the River Keepers. Jay?
We have one more public
comment
comment, and then we need to check and see if there's any others.
online.
Oh, online? Okay. I'm sorry.
Good morning, Board. My name is Melissa Charleroy, Board Services Manager at JEA. This morning, I'd like to read a comment on behalf of Ms. Margaret Kajlini. She states, I have been concerned for some time at the slow implementation of solar and wind power for Jacksonville. This could so easily be incorporated and integrated into design standards for schools, parking lots, and even the new JEA building under construction. Why, for instance, are there not solar panels on the rooftop of its headquarters? There needs to be a creative policy of working with design firms, architectural firms, and the DIA to make this integration of sustainable energy sources an absolute building permit requirement. In the meantime, JEA should accelerate permanently the end of coal-fired generation of heat. I thought we had already replaced that with natural gas. There is plenty of land available which could be leased, if necessary, from businesses with large parking lots, such as grocery stores, shopping centers, sports venues, airports, etc., to make solar roofs overhead, thus cooling the earth while supplying energy. Amazing the slow-footed response to a real energy crisis in the making. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a,
Landon, do we have anybody
Yes.
online?
Not yet, but for those that have joined us virtually, you may now submit your public comments by raising your hand within the participant window or by submitting your comments in the chat. And I'll just give a couple of seconds here. I do not see any public comments from the virtual audience. I'll hand it back over to you.
thank you. Jay, I'll hand it to you for your report.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to spend a little bit of time talking, and I believe there have been times when I have started my report and I've said I'm going to have it a little shorter, and so as a warning today, I'm doing the opposite, and it's going to take a little bit longer because there's a lot of items that I want to be sure that we cover. So it's the first board meeting of the new fiscal year. We lose track of that sometimes since we are on the October year, but we're in fiscal year 23. And I want to recognize and reiterate the appreciation we have for the board members. We have Dr. Faison and Tom Van Osdol are on virtually here with those of you that are here in person. Being a board member of what is one of the largest utilities in the country takes a lot of time, and I appreciate the time that you put into this. We're grateful. We thank the employees, the staff, the team a lot, but we appreciate your time and effort too. General DeSalvo is not with us today because his mother-in-law passed away last week, and so he is with family, as he should be, and I hope you can keep him in your thoughts as he goes through a difficult time. Speaking of board members, though, Dr. Faison is online virtually, and we want to congratulate him on his upcoming inauguration as the first president and CEO of Edward Waters University. The actual inauguration is on November 4th at 10 o'clock in the morning. We will have representatives from JEA participating in that. And there is some disagreement on who might be able to go see Babyface, who will also be here at one of the other events honoring Dr. Faison. So thank you for your leadership at Edward Waters and as part of the board. We appreciate that. We spend a lot of time here focused and thinking about fuel and purchase power and the integrated resource plan and how much we're spending on O&M. But this is also the time of year that we spend looking at goals, doing performance reviews, looking at what we're doing operationally and individually. At our next board meeting, we're going to roll out a new format for our performance scorecard. The leadership team continues to take a look at our strategic objectives. The objectives are really the lens with which we decide all the things that we're doing, where we put our resources. We're also continuing the work with our employee engagement results. Meeting with team members, listening to their challenges, and spending time understanding what it's going to take to be the best utility in the country for our customers, but also the best place to work for our employees. We'll provide a more thorough update at the upcoming Workforce and Customer Committee meeting soon. I'd also like to take a moment to welcome Pedro Melendez, who has got a really big picture on the screen, but is also in the room with us here today. He is our new Vice President of Planning, Engineering, and Construction. He's a utility veteran and comes with a vast wealth of utility experience. In this new role, he will lead teams that manage the planning, engineering, and construction of JEA's electric, water, chilled water, all of the assets that we have, which is a large amount of work. He'll report to Renetta Marshall. I'm excited that you're here. We are excited that you're here. He started with new employee orientation at 8 o'clock on the morning that we also stood up the Emergency Operations Center. I went through what I think is the fastest new employee orientation ever and was in the Emergency Operations Center moments later to help us with that. Councilman Boylan mentioned this, but as far as how we're dealing with the council, I think we'll continue to work with you and communicate and let you all know as much as we can, which is everything, about what is going on. I do appreciate the work that the team took to work on the collective bargaining agreements. It was apparently, this is the fastest that we've ever done this. The team did a really good job. That is both the people representing the unions and the team in HR that worked through this. And then we've had several meetings with the council, and I appreciate that. And tonight, that collective bargaining agreement is scheduled on the consent agenda and should be in good shape because we've had lots of conversations about it. So I'm going to also stop the slideshow just for a moment, and since I recognize Pedro, I'm going to let Ray spend a little bit of time giving a brief update on supply chain. We tie it back into where Pedro is because the other thing that he gets to deal with is some of the issues surrounding what is more than transformers, but we sort of use transformers as a proxy for our concern about supply chain in general. But I'll let Ray give a brief update on where we are with that.
Thank you, Jay. Hey, good morning, Board. Good morning, Chair Stein and Board. As Jay said, I'm going to give a brief update on where we are as far as supply chain is concerned. And this is something that we have brought to the Board previously. And while I'm giving the update, I'm representing a whole team of employees, Ted's employees, Laura's employees, that have been working diligently on this. That is a national issue in order to reduce the impact to our community. So we have some of the initiatives include increasing our suppliers, going to non-domestic providers, looking at alternative service delivery, and that includes temporary overhead lines, larger transformers, modifying our standards, and then partially energizing some of the projects. And to give you some stats on where we currently are and where we're going, since July, or over the last 3 months, we had energized about 1,000 customers, and that was across 12 projects. Over the next 3 weeks, not 3 months, we expect to energize an additional 1,500 customers over 23 projects. And that is tied directly to the number of transformers that we have recently got in over the last few weeks. So addressing the backlog is going in a positive direction. The schedule that we're seeing for delivery of transformers has improved, as well as the number that are currently under production. But I want this tale to be cautionary because we're still in hurricane season. And so we always are mindful of making sure that we have an appropriate safety stock, an appropriate storm stock. We're working collaboratively across JEA. This includes our procurement teams, engineering, our operations team, and of course the development community who has been working with us in a very positive way as far as communication. Because communication is key to this whole thing, and communication flows both ways. So that's currently where we are. I wanted to give this update. I think we're going in a positive direction, but this is not a sprint at all. We're going to be in this at least for I think the next 2 to 3 years. But working collaboratively in communication, I think we'll see this through. And I'm going to turn it over to Ted and see if he would like to add anything to that.
Thank you, Ray. I would just reiterate some of the things that Ray said. For me personally, I've been very proud of the work that's been done throughout the company on this. A lot of people, both on the procurement side the engineering side, the communication side have stepped up to the plate and brought their A game. And I think we are being very proactive in trying to move forward with these issues. I agree with Ray in that this is not something we're trying to get through the next few weeks on. This is something that's going to be hanging over us for several months to several years. And so, but I think we are putting things into place that will put us in a better position as we move into 2023 and beyond. So I'm very happy and pleased with how well the team is working together, the communication that's happening, the thoughtfulness, and the real strive to help our customers.
Yeah, let me say a few words, because I got a lot of calls from developers. And, you know, they're under a lot of stress and a lot of, you know, they're working to please customers. And I was so impressed of how the communications from Ray, Jay, Ted, the team, and Pedro coming in here when he did how he did. This is a monumental task that, you know, we have not seen. We took over some legacy issues, shortfalls that we can't do anything about, nobody complained about, but, you know, there are certain supplies we need to hold for hurricanes. And I just was so impressed with making sure that they were on top of talking to developers, honest with developers. And, you know, when you're dealing with a difficult situation, to talk truth and talk process and making sure that they know what you're dealing with on a daily basis. So, Jay, your team, in my way, and Rick, I'm sure you've dealt with it also, but I was so impressed.
Yeah, I wanted to make a few comments. I mean, their team has been amazing and so forth, and it's all come down to communications. I think things started out a little slow, but they've definitely picked up, and the communication, like you said, Ray, goes both ways with this entire process. But I think going forward, we just need to really be out there really having the stakeholder meetings that we've been having and keeping that going. I think it's working, but obviously we still have a long way to go. So whatever we can do to increase that stock.
Well, that was going to be my question. You know, we referenced 2,500 houses since July. What is the backlog of houses that's out there? I'm just trying to size that.
And that's why we have Paige O'Hare for that specific.
Well, in week 3, can you answer that question?
If I may, really quick, join you real quick. We are working with the communities and the developers to get a better long-term view of what is the backlog, what's coming, to be able to be in front of this issue. But we're seeing about somewhere between 3,000, 5,000 homes coming in the next 18 months period, right, based on what we know. And again, we're using a process that allows us to have visibility based on design and stages in their construction process. That is where we're putting a lot of efforts right now, to make sure that we not only see what's happening in the next 6 months, but we also have more conversations about where the development community is doing long-term in Jacksonville.
What I'd like to be able to do is, we have a couple of different committee meetings coming up, and it touches a couple of different places. I think having a little bit deeper dive into where we are and what the backlog is, and how some of the steps that we're taking to try to alleviate that. I want to reiterate what a good job people have done, but I don't want it to sound like it is over. And some of the home builders, developers, and the community that we've been working with have talked to people, and they've described it as a crisis. And it is, and it still is. We are better for the last few weeks because we've gotten some transformers in, and that's helped kind of relieve a little bit of the pressure. So let us get some more deeper dives to get exactly where we are, what our trajectory looks like, both on the things that we have already, because we have, in the last couple of weeks, we added 2,700 new units, that's multifamily or homes, to the list of things, but that takes us well into calendar year '24. And so we need to understand that. We also will, between now and the next couple of weeks, we should have some of the non-traditional, non-domestic suppliers, all of that in order, and we should be able to get some more. That'll help catch us up. So we'll dig a little bit deeper. I also want to, while this impacts us locally, so it feels like it's a local issue, this is a national issue that has been reiterated because the National Association of Home Builders, Associated Builders Contractors, the General Contractors of America, and the Independent Electrical Contractors have sent a letter to the White House explaining how this crisis is across the country. Interestingly enough, Duval County was called out specifically in this because we're one of the fastest growing areas of the country. And we are one of the places that is impacted. But Arkansas and Florida and other spots across the nation were also all called out. They detailed some of the concerns. It's a national issue, a national problem. I participate on the Electric Subsector Coordinating Council, and one of the teams is meeting every Friday with utilities across the country and government agencies, DOE, Department of Labor, the White House, to discuss options and abilities for both the industry as a whole and the government to be able to help kind of resolve some of the problems and concerns. But it is a national problem. We've got a good team doing as much as we can.
And that deeper dive kind of pipeline assessment would be in the Finance and Operations Committee in December? Is that what you're envisioning?
Yes.
Okay, good.
I think working on the alternate suppliers is something that we really got to work on.
Yes. We are very close with two of the three, is the way that I would summarize that. We also have good relationships with the other vendors, and I think I said this at the beginning, but keep in mind, we spend our time focused on transformers, but there are problems with switchgear and other components and poles to run the system, but also with pumps and motors on the water side and vehicles for, it is much more broad, and it is the type of thing that affects lots of organizations. The good news is that this helps us understand why, when we talk about being foundational to the community, how that really kind of manifests itself. We are important, foundational to the community, and that's why we have to get this right and do as best we can. And part of that is the communication. Whenever things are not, we don't just talk about things and celebrate positive and try to make us look like we're doing all of these great, wonderful things. We also try to explain what the issues are so that the people that need to rely on us understand where we're coming from. So a lot more to come on this, and we'll keep on working on it.
Jay, what can the federal government do to help something like this?
There's a Defense Production Act has been issued, and so we're talking to them. That when you talk about transformers themselves, there's two overreaching issues. One of them is raw materials. The steel that we use in transformers is the same steel that we use in electric vehicles, the same steel that we use in charging stations, and steel that we use in other things. So there's a limit on the supply of materials. And then there's a limit on labor right now, labor constraints that, again, a lot of industries are seeing, and so we're working with them on what types of actions can we take because of the Defense Production Act, short term. Longer term, it's regulations and rules that we could put in place to help speed things up. So it is not an easy, there's no silver bullet where they're going to come in and say, here's how we fix this. The industry also needs to change some of the things that we are doing because for years and years and years, each utility has had, not each, but significantly different transformer specs and different specs for some of the materials that are out there. And that means that as manufacturers are building them, they have to reset the line every single time for different transformer types. And sometimes we can't change our voltage very easily, it'd be very expensive. We're not going to go down that path. But we can change which way the doors open, what the angles of the connections are, where the holes are placed to be able to tie two things. We can change those to be more uniform, and it would simplify some of the contracting and the manufacturing that for years and years and years, whether it is because of technical reasons or, quite frankly, because of ego or unwillingness to be open-minded to things. We've always done it the way we've always done it, and we've got a history. We need to change that. That was probably less for the board and more for anybody else that might be watching.
Yeah, but the other thing is, we've been focused short-term on the electrical side. We're going to have issues, in my opinion, on the water side. And I just think today you got to be smarter and more thoughtful. How do you really, supply chain is a real issue. It's not going to be solved tomorrow.
We already have delays on the water side too. That's why, so whenever we go down into the deeper dive, we'll spend a little bit of time about some other key kind of areas that we're dealing with. It is not an issue. Ted said this, it's an issue that's not going away in months. And in fact, some of the temporary solutions that we are using will require us to go back and redo some of the work. If it's overhead, if it's temporarily overhead, then we'll have to go back and replace that with underground. And that means we need more transformers longer. So we also will change some of our policies and the way that we're stocking things. And once we come through this, we may have a larger inventory than we've had in the past until we get comfortable that we're done with this. And that's okay too. This
Might not be bad to kind of maintain a larger inventory.
That's right.
But you also need a hurricane supply.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
we're gonna have that's what we were digging into, which was some legacy issues we were taking over. So how they manage this, that's very impressive.
We've got to change the way that we have thought about all of this and make things better with the new team that's here. We can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the other completely separate topic that is, I think, more exciting, at least it's more fun, is that we have team members every day who are working on water and wastewater system to keep the system reliable. And we've got two things that I want to talk about on the screen now. One is congratulate the team that is there with a big trophy. They represented JEA at the Water Environment Federation Conference, WEFTEC, at the World Operations Challenge. And the team is coached by Ryan Cohey and captained by Jason Jolly. Robbie Addy, Patrick Etheridge, and Kerry Lewis round out the team. And they were in New Orleans at WEFTEC and won first place in the collections event. This is something that simulates the repairing of a sewer line, making a tap. We participate in these because of the camaraderie, but mostly because it helps us keep safety in mind whenever we're doing the work. I think they were able to have a little bit of fun, but it's also really fun when they come back with a recognition of what a good job they've done. The other item that's up here is on the water and wastewater side of the world, there's something called the hydrant hysteria competition. And for the first time, this is a team, and there's two of them. It's a two-person team that will be competing at the AWWA Florida section at the end of this month. The hydrant hysteria competition is something that it's a timed event, so it's fast-paced, two-person competition to see who can assemble a fire hydrant quickly, totally, and accurately. Again, it helps with safety. We have 2 or 3 teams that are going to participate in this, but the thing that we're most excited about this particular year is that our Women in Trades group that is supporting the idea of getting and having more women involved in the trades is going to have an all-woman team, and so this is part of that team. And Zasha Delorbe, Laura Biles, Flo Bent and Janelle Hatch are going to be part of that team. Some of the folks at Pearl Street are helping teach them, train them, do this. Sam Howard and John Alderman are helping as trainers. And then we've got a couple of other teams that are going to be participating in that. These events on the water side and on the wastewater side are similar to what you've heard of at the Line Workers Rodeo that we also participated in the last couple of months. And so this is exciting time for these folks, and I appreciate their willingness to be involved in this.
This is a big deal. I mean, I think you told me recently there are utilities across the country that have teams that just compete. They're not like in the normal course of business. These folks work every day for us and represent us out in the field and take care of our clients, and they're not out training to win a gold medal. So this is a big deal. This is what they do every day.
This is they're volunteering to help support us in this work, and I think that they are having fun doing it, and we appreciate that they're willing to do it.
What role did the dog play? I'm just curious in the picture. Is he one of our
The dog's
associates? The dog in the picture, is that?
You know,
Sorry.
right now is the moment that I recognized there was a dog in that picture. I was focused
I
on,
hadn't seen it either.
I was focused on the big trophy and the guys that were enjoying that.
Well, I'd like to recognize.
We will
the
find
dog.
out about the dog.
I'd like, we need
learn
to
more about that.
appropriately recognize that.
Every great team has a mascot.
Exactly.
On November 9th this year, we will have our annual salute to JEA veterans. We have about 20%, just under 20% of our employees that are veterans, and General DeSalvo is going to help us moderate a panel discussion. So thank you, General DeSalvo, for being willing to do that. We appreciate that. The next item is a celebration of what is the 50th anniversary of the Clean Water Act. I appreciate that we've had, over the last several meetings, we've had people that have come and talked about the environment and things that we need to be doing as we look forward. I also think that JEA, we talk about being important and focusing on public health, public safety, so that we can support economic development. 50 years ago, the Clean Water Act was adopted, and nation's water in crisis. 2/3 of lakes, rivers, and coastal waters were unsafe for fishing and swimming, and it is much better now. The St. Johns River and tributaries are important assets for this community, and I think that we are potentially the biggest positive impact on the river because of the work that our team does every day. And we have reduced the nitrogen discharge into the river since 1999 significantly, and working with the regulators and the legislature to make the zero discharge bill come to pass. And we're also working with the legislator and regulators on what we need to do to be able to meet the timeline, because it's an aggressive timeline and it's an aggressive project. So our teams are working with folks in Tallahassee to be sure that we understand what the timeline should be to do the best that we can for the utility. I appreciate the work. Lisa Reineman, Bud Para is here representing her. So Lisa Reineman, the St. Johns River Keeper, and all the other folks that are focused on the health of the St. Johns River. She's also a member of our Integrated Resource Plan Stakeholders Committee, and all of that will help make us better and stronger as we move forward. Last week, we hosted the 8th Annual Light It Forward Awards ceremony. This honors local human service advocates and organizations that help serve Jacksonville, Northeast Florida residents in need. I think Sheila Presley really, when she was speaking to the group, I liked what she said. She said, where would we be as a community without all of you, these agencies? Where would we be as society without all of you? Each year, these agencies help support utility bill assistance to JEA customers who face short-term financial challenges. And since May of 2021, nearly 22,000 customers have been supported by these organizations. There's about 24 local agencies that were attending the ceremony. And at the ceremony, we recognized folks that were part of the Northeast Florida Community Action Agency, the City of Jacksonville, and the Northeast Florida AIDS Network as recipients of the Light It Forward Award. Now, I told you it was going to go a little longer, but we're going to break it up again because we've got a quick video to show you to talk about a little bit more about the hurricane and the response that we had to the hurricane. So, we are preparing for a storm that has wind, rain, flooding. We want people to be safe, take care of themselves in their home, and the crews are getting trucks ready right now. It's one of those times where you plan for the worst, hope for the best.
Tell me a little bit about, how much additional help you expect to come in.
Right now, we've got 160 people on the ground at this site. By the end of the day and into tomorrow and Saturday morning, we'll have up to 240 people here to do both tree and vegetation removal and the line crews. And we absolutely want to thank all of our mutual aid providers, all the folks that are coming in from out of town to help us through the storm.
Absolutely. What will trigger sending these crews out to help restore power?
We will wait until the weather clears. Obviously, with big bucket trucks like this, we have to make sure that it's safe for them to be out in the wind and in the weather. And as soon as we get that go ahead, we will roll these troops out into the streets to go ahead and restore power and services to JEA customers.
This year, with Hurricane Ian, we have experienced 0 SSOs, 0 sanitary sewer overflows.
We've got professionals in our water, in our electric, in our call center, in every aspect of our organization. They are experts, they are professionals, and they know what to do and how to do it, and they're here to help keep things running. If I have boots and a JEA hat on, you know it's an emergency. That's how. It's one of the ways you can tell. We were well prepared and really lucky. But even with the fact that it turned, and for those of you who have lived in Florida for a while, understand how small the impact was, this was still not an insignificant event for us, and our estimate is that it was 5.7, so just nearly $6 million that we spent trying to keep this system running and operating and responding to the problem. But the reason we were well prepared is because of the work that the team has done. I'm sorry, I got sidetracked because a text just came through. The dog is a leak detection dog, which now I need to learn more about. I don't know what that means exactly, so more to come. Hi Vu just sent me that in the middle of this. Thank you, Hi. I'm going to turn that over. So we were prepared really well for the storm. This is not something that we started on September 21st. We started tracking Hurricane Ian on September 21st, but our work goes on around the year and all the time. We have taken efforts to harden our system. We do vegetation, year-round vegetation management and tree trimming to keep power outages out. And as you heard Hi say on the video, there were 0 SSOs this time, even though there was flooding, in large part because of the backup generators, the diesel pumps, the work that we've done to help on our storm preparedness. Our operations team increased storm stock for folks that are working with us to get transformers and saw all those transformers that were on the back of that truck. That is our storm stock. It is 4 emergencies that we keep in place. And those are, luckily, we didn't have to use very many of those, and we're able to be prepared for whatever the next storm may be. The work that we've done on capital improvements and in electric and water, up nearly $500 million in capital investments, almost $200 million in electric, $300 million in water and wastewater, chilled water, will help us be prepared for whatever the next storm is. Hurricane Irma, we had nearly 2 million gallons of sanitary sewer overflows with dozens of lift stations impacted, and the water team has worked really hard to be prepared to keep that from happening in the future as best that we can. The leadership team is working to be prepared for the future for us to respond and restore appropriately to these events. We've got this particular storm, we had a peak of about 22,000 people that were out of power, but we restored power to 163,000 customers throughout the entire event. I want to spend a little bit of time thanking and appreciating the work that our mutual aid crews have helped us with. We called on, through a combination of relationships that we have with other utilities and the Florida Municipal Electric Association, we called on Riviera Utilities and Opelika Power Services those are both from Alabama, Austin Energy and CPS Energy from Texas, and then a group of utilities from the Northeast Public Power Association from New England. All of them started towards us. We were able to see the storm was not as bad, and so the crews from Alabama were diverted to another location. And then we released the other crews after a couple of days, and they were able to go restore power in Central Florida. And so that relationship with other utilities is so important for us to be prepared and be able to respond to our community. And I appreciate the work that they did. We also were able to, after the storm passed, send some crews to Sanibel Island, and I'm particularly proud of the work that they have done. I think we've sent a second crew down there now, so we've flipped some out and another team is down there. But I've got a quick video to show you about Sanibel Island and our response to help them too.
My name is Kyle Schottler, and I'm the manager of Water Wastewater System Operations and Customer Response. We received a multitude of task orders from the wastewater utility here on Sanibel Island. These task orders included removing debris, removing trees away from pump stations to be able to gain access to ensure function. Additionally, our crews were able to repair multiple force mains that were damaged throughout the duration of this event. We were able to do this because our crews made it onto a convoy over the bridge to Sanibel Island yesterday. The destruction varies throughout the island, from minor damages to small buildings to catastrophic damages to customers' homes. The full restoration of the island is going to be something that's difficult to gauge. At this point, we're still in a partial investigatory phase of the wastewater system, but do ensure that we're going to do everything that we can while we're here to provide support to the utility as well as the customers of the island.
That is, I can't say how impressed I am with not only the team that we had at JEA, but the teams across the country that have been able to come help. And I want to remind us that Sanibel Island is on the ocean, and we are on the ocean. And so it is not lost on us that we go help places when we can, because we may need help other times. And I'm proud of the work that they're doing and continuing to do down there. And I'm looking forward to when they get back safely. And
I know that we've got, I think, a glitch in the video, but I was on the ground down there 5 days after, because that's part of my market that I run for my organization. And the devastation from really Venice all the way down to Marco Island is incredible. The impact of this storm is incredible. And Jay, you and I talked about it, and I'm so proud and grateful that the JEA was able to go support that community. But the modeling of what we had to be prepared for changed with this storm.
Yes.
To be there, and we had gas ready to deliver to our associates and ice, and it couldn't get there because I-75 was flooded. So you couldn't go across the entire state. And the flooding in this event was really the issue. The winds at 155 miles per hour were horrible, but it was really the water. So as we model future disasters, we need to kind of push it and say, well, what if this happened? Because what I'm understanding from this community is they never envisioned any of this really happening the way it happened. And it will take years and years and years for this part of our state to recover. It's just, the devastation is just, it's horrible.
The work that we do every day is important, and it sometimes is taken for granted even by those of us that are doing it every day. I think because of our name is JEA and people still think of it as an electric organization, it gets lost how critical and important the water side of our system is, and how important it is for the health of our systems, because it is important and critical to have electricity running for the economic development of the community, but it is what drives the rest of everything else. It allows the hospitals to operate, it allows the water system to run and work, and that helps protect the public health. And you're right, it does change the level of effort that we need to put into and understand what our impact is to the community. And we need to understand that the risk, because while we might be a little further north and the waters might be a little cooler and we might not have quite the same potential impact, if all we do is prepare for small storms, then we won't be ready for the biggest of storms. And so we've got a team of people that I'm excited about the fact that we've done this. The team, through our emergency preparedness work, Brandon Edwards has got this organization as the director of security and emergency preparedness, but we've brought on Adam Pendley, who has been here since July and is an expert in this emergency preparedness world. I talked about how Pedro started his first day, but imagine if you were coming to work. Matt Witta is the person that came to work, and his role is to be the planning and business continuity coordinator. And he started with Pedro, and we said, welcome, here's your badge, and here's your sign-on, come help us. And he was in the Emergency Operations Center. We've added another team member to that because one of the most important things that we do is respond to emergencies, outages, and crises. It makes sense to me to have a full team whose focus is solely on that emergency preparedness activities, bigger than just hurricanes. We've got a team looking at the resiliency that we've talked about, and we got that is resiliency beyond hurricanes, because right now that's what we're talking about and what we prepare for. But there are activities, there's emergencies going. Somebody in our organization is responding to an emergency that's critical to the people that they're responding to right now. So we're committed to continue doing that, to continue working with mutual aid, both giving and have good relationships to receive it. And I appreciate the work that all of those folks are doing. And then finally, although we were lucky and I'm happy about all that, it was devastating to teams of people that were impacted. I would like to let you know that I believe this to be true. I believe that we are going to meet at the new building the next time we have a board meeting. We might not be. We should be getting very close. If we're not, we should be very close for January or February. Well, I didn't check that before I said it. So we're going to be very close. The building, we're going to start moving in at the end of December and move people in over the couple of months. But Nancy Vesey has worked, not alone, but has worked tirelessly to make sure that new building is ready to go in February for a board meeting. But I appreciate the work she and the rest of the team have done. There's a lot of work that has to be done to move into that area, but I'm excited about it. We're making really good progress, and so we're close on that, and we will have around that same time plans for what we hope to be able to do with this building as we move forward. So I feel like I warned you appropriately that was going to be longer than normal, but I appreciate the indulgence because all of that I think is important, critical stuff that we needed to cover. So thank you. I'll answer any questions.
Any questions, comments? So with that, we'll move on to JEA performance. Howard, I want to wish you a happy birthday, and I'll just state that was in the emergency center and did walk around the community with Jay Wednesday morning when nobody knew what was going on or how it would happen. And quite frankly, I'll say this, I was scared of what we're gonna face, because at that time, we didn't know where the storm was heading. They put on a great face, but we were walking around, and Howard, the enthusiasm and the commitment was just impressive. And also Pedro, as a new member, his commitment to work with Ray, it is just makes you feel really blessed that we have the commitment of the members. And a lot of these people were sleeping at their desks or in their trucks. And just, again, Jay, want to thank you and your team for everything that was done. But with that, happy birthday, and I'll hand it to you.
Good morning, and thank you, Chairman Stein, and good morning, Board. I'm Howard Ford, Director of Residential Customer Experience. Been with JEA for a whole 10 months now. My team is responsible for assisting our residential customers through our contact centers and our Customer Solutions Center. This update reflects our FY22 scorecard data. Overall, O&M spend for FY22 came in at just above 90%, or $421 million. This is below the goal of 95% at $441 million. Shortfall was not driven by any one business or department within the company, but was broadly spread across the organization. Breaking the overall O&M spend down, JEA did meet the goal for water, coming in right at 95%, but fell short in electric, finishing just below 87%. For fuel and purchase power, we saw a decline in natural gas and purchase power. Prices through September bringing us in $5 million lower for the month than projected. Looking forward, the projected F&PP expenses for the first quarter of FY23 decreased by a staggering 15% since last month. The majority of the decrease was due to a 13% pullback in natural gas forward prices in the first quarter. The remainder of the decrease was from the lower projected petcoke prices and lower purchase power prices. Capital spend. JEA's capital expenditures for the year were $495 million, or 99% of the goal of $500 million. The unaudited results for the FY22 Pay for Performance program result in a payout of 2.2% of base salaries. Staff will request your consideration for this item in the consent agenda a little later in the meeting. This concludes the monthly performance update. We're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I have a question regarding the veteran representation. I'm going to channel General DeSalvo and ask, that's an interesting stat that we're now at 18%, which is the lowest we've been in 3 years, yet our retention rates have stayed pretty much the same. Is there a reason for that? I mean, percentages are numerators and denominators, so maybe we're not hiring enough veterans. I'm just curious. That was a surprise to me.
I don't think there's a cause for concern. We've got a really very strong program, and we are hiring a lot of people right now and going through a process, and we'll keep an eye on it and be sure that we're okay. I think it is a math issue right now, but we'll stay focused on it and be sure that we are where we need to be. There's a state law that we follow on the process on how we do veterans, and we're reviewing to be sure that that's the right thing to do. So, David, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, but I think we'll keep an eye and bring that back with more information at the Workforce Committee.
Veterans are a part of that focus. I do think it's somewhat cyclical. We've had a couple more retirees that were veterans that have been long-term employees. But it's, it's a point, and we are observing it. It's actually a point and a half. We are observing it, though.
All right, thank you.
So one question, Jay, is with the winter coming up, we having any trouble with supplies on coal, gas? I know we were concerned about some Columbia,
So,
yeah.
we think we have gotten all of the concerns on our coal, pet coke, and limestone delivery. Do you want to mention, Ray, do you want to talk a little bit about the limestone? So I said, do you want to talk about it? And as I asked the question, I realized I'm going to, why don't you tell everybody about the limestone issue?
Gladly, Jay. The one that we had concern when it came to supply was limestone. And we believe we've turned the corner on that. We have a Canadian supplier, and the concern was through the winter, making sure. And so, and I believe Nancy.
So everybody knows that our long-term supply in Mexico was the quarry was nationalized, just for everybody's benefit. So, I'm sorry, Ray.
No, that's fine. Yes, our long-term supplier, we needed to go elsewhere. So we got the Canadian supplier, and then we looked at other sources, and we believe it's a Jamaican supply, and the quality of that matches what we needed. And so we are currently in the process of securing that supply. And so now with Canada and with Jamaica, and I believe there's another, it doesn't come to mind, but with diversifying the suppliers, we believe that we have turned that corner, and we are fine as far as that's concerned.
We have, the limestone meets the chemical characteristics that we need. It's a little bigger than what we need, so we've got a crusher on site at Northside to be able to manage that. And natural gas supplies have, in the last month or 6 weeks, have gotten a little bit better, and our fuel cost has dropped in this month pretty substantially. We thought they were going to be significantly higher. They're down at about $41 a megawatt hour right now. They had peaked at something over 85. And so the combination of cooler weather and the lower fuel cost will be a big benefit to our customers coming up as they see their bills over the next month. We have a strong policy on hedging and kind of keeping an eye on what needs to happen with our natural gas and our coal fleet. And but we do expect to see a slight increase in those fuel costs over the next few months until spring, whenever it comes back down again. It's another one of the topics that we'll cover in the next, over the next few months. We'll keep on talking to you all about that.
With that, hand it to Marty.
Absolutely, thank you. The Governance, Audit, and Compliance Committee met on October 13th, and General DeSalvo was in attendance, and John Baker is amazing to me. He attends every committee, and the action really for this board happens at the committee. So you were in attendance as well, despite the fact you weren't necessarily required to be there. So we appreciate you being there. We really focused on our audit services activities in this meeting. Jody and Lee led the team to kind of talk through JEA's compliance and preparation for continued compliance, obviously. We reviewed, and it's in your consent agenda, the fiscal year 23 internal audit plan. It's nice to see that we're pivoting towards things like auditing our recruitment process and the length of time it takes to recruit. It's pivoting to those processes that make me realize that we're kind of just back to business as usual as an organization. So that was good. The full scope of the internal audit plan is in your package. I will not go through it because I know you all read that. I am going to encourage all of you to fill out the annual board self-assessment and the CEO evaluation. I covered that in a previous report out. You should have received an email from Melissa. If you did not, please get with her. It is our goal to review both evaluations at the January 13th committee meeting and report out at the January 24th board meeting. I'm going to beg you to submit those before November 15th. We gave you a lot of time. but we get nervous if we don't get them by like the 14th. So do me a favor, just knock it out over the next couple of days. And our next meeting, as I mentioned, is January 13th. Happy to address any questions that we have or concerns.
With that, we'll move to the consent agenda. Ask for a motion.
So moved.
Second,
Second?
discussion.
I just had a quick question. You know, as we pivot, when Empower acquired Mass Mutual, you know, we've got the document in our package, and they have an entire exhibit focused on cyber risk. And it's just a reminder how vulnerable we are to our vendors. And I'm going to presume that we actually asked if they've had a cyber breach. And maybe we can't address that in this public setting, but because it's 10 pages of their document, it just gave me pause to at least ask the question.
So we've got a team both on our compliance side in Jody's group and in our tech services group that are working on that, and is one of the items that we cover with our procurement process to be sure that we are in as good a shape as we can be on that, and we'll stay focused on it.
Jay, do we bid that out periodically?
The 401, I don't know which, is that?
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do.
The provider pool on that world is shrinking.
Just shrunk.
It shrunk, yeah, the provider pool in that world is not that many of them left. All right, that satisfies my question. Thank you.
Go to vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those against? Motion passes. Or the consent passes. Fiscal year 22 budget amendment. Laura?
Good morning, Chair Stein and board members. I'm Lori Whitmer, the Director of Budget. We are seeking a budgetary amendment after the close of the fiscal year to appropriate revenues exceeding the approved budget for electric, water, and chilled water. First up, we have the electric operating budget. Both the revenue and expense side reflect the amended budget. The original was $1.289 billion, and we had increased revenue of $286 million. That's a total amended budget of $1.575 billion. On the revenue side, on the left, from left to right, you see the increases across the board. We had $16.9 million increase to base revenue, $263 million to fuel, $0.4 million to environmental DSM, and $4.9 million to other. That is driven primarily due to higher fuel costs and higher sales than budgeted. Fuel is a direct pass-through. So you see the 263.5 on the revenue and the expense side. The remaining revenue of all other items is $22 million. Those funds are allocated to the capital fund that you see on the expense side. The remaining $40 million in the capital fund are for budgeted expenses that were not spent. We had debt service come under by $2.2 million. Non-fuel purchase power came under by 3.7. O&M came under by 34.7, and other was slightly higher at 0.8. Next, we have the water operating budget. Both the revenue and expense side reflect the amended budget. The original was $542 million. We have an increased revenue of 15.3. That makes a total amended budget of $557 million. On the revenue side, you see an $8.4 million increase to the base revenue, and that is due to higher sales than budgeted. We have a $0.2 million increase to capacity fees due to increased fees that were effective of April 2022. And then we have a $6.7 million increase to other revenue due to increased water and sewer connection fees and FEMA reimbursement. That $15 million in additional revenue is added to our capital fund that you see on the expense side. The remaining $23 million added is from budgeted expenses not spent. We were down on interlocal by 1.7, less on debt service by 6.6 million, lower on O&M by 8 million, and lower on other by 6.3 million. Next, we have our district energy system operating budget. Both the revenue and expense side reflect the amended budget. The original was $8.8 million. We had increased revenue of $178,000 for a total amended budget of $9 million. On the revenue side, we have $150,000 increase to the base revenue due to the change in the variable fuel rate. We had an $8,000 increase in other and $21,000 increase in investment income. On the expense side, you see that debt service was down $111,000. Most of that was used for our O&M that was up by $104,000. The difference of $7,000 and the additional revenue of $178,000 are allocated to the capital fund. Next slide, we have the summary of our amended budget totals by system. The staff recommends the board authorize the managing director CEO to make a budgetary amendment after the close of the fiscal year to appropriate revenues exceeding the approved budget. Are there any questions?
No, my suggestion, we make a motion and then start discussion if there is any. So is there a motion?
Make a motion.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Let me take us just real quick. This is the first time we've done a budget amendment like this. I think that's true. And part of the reason is that we are trying to be as clear, transparent about our budget as we can be. And in past years, we have always added what was called, and you may remember seeing this, a 5% weather contingency. When you add a 5% weather contingency to the budget, then it means the budget is big enough that we will be under it. And we feel like it is more appropriate for us to budget what we anticipate seeing. If it's in this particular, we had higher revenues because the weather, it was driven by weather almost exclusively on all systems. Water was a little bit of growth, but mostly we anticipated some of that. So it's almost all driven by weather. And so that's why this is coming to you. It's different than we've done in the past. And but I think it's more, even though it's a little confusing with all the numbers, I think it's a more transparent way to budget and plan and forecast. So that's why it's
It's
was
gonna
the
be.
challenge of the previous finance committee that we do it this way.
Yes.
I'll go back in time. When I chaired the committee, we kind of said, is the budget process really the right way to do it? And we asked for more transparency. So this makes, to me, a great deal of sense.
Yes.
But one other thing, in today's world, budgeting with supply chain and price movement, it's very, very difficult. And I just want to make sure everybody's going to be prepared for our CapEx. You know, what you think it's going to cost more. What you think you're going to be able to do is going to take more time. So it's going to take a different thought process on budgeting.
It is. The good news is that Lori is, she has talked to you before, so she didn't introduce herself, but is relatively new in her role managing this budget and side of the world. And Victor Blackshear, who has talked to you about rates, is also doing financial planning. The combination of the two of them, who have been in their role now for 2 months, maybe 2 months, and Joe Orfano, are starting to work with their teams to look at this differently. And then especially on the capital side of the world. I don't know how Pedro can get mentioned 3 times in one meeting, but Pedro has the work on the capital side to work with Joe and Victor and Lori and the rest of the teams to be able to accomplish this. And we're going to continue to be transparent, even if it means we have to bring things to you to make sure that everybody knows what's going on, and that's our focus and the reason this looks this way. Yes, it's going to be harder.
It's going to be harder.
Yes, we have to think differently. And it's part of the reason we talked to the team about being able to think differently, to move faster, to be able to respond appropriately to all the issues that we're facing.
If there's a shout out, Joe deserves a shout out before we got involved and after we've gotten involved. So if anybody can do it, we're blessed to have Joe involved.
And just a quick reminder, this is all started, we've got to get a budget to city council. There's just so many moving parts when we're in the process of budgeting, to Bobby's point, that our budget process will be a moving target for a while. There's timing, the timing of our budget is a challenge too.
So with that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? So now, Jody, with our favorite subject, with a little bit of good news.
Maybe good news?
Good morning, Chair Stein and the
Joe
board
did a little
meeting.
news up there.
Jody Brooks, the Chief Administrative Officer, here to give the report on Plant Vogel, what the latest news. Two big events happened and since we reported out last. One dealing with the litigation being resolved between MEAG and Georgia Power over the tender offer. And we really hope that we don't get to take the benefit of the 20% that was negotiated in that settlement. The chart in your materials talks about what would happen if the project exceeds in $1 billion increments, and what that does to the megawatt pricing. And so the tender offer, one of the reports I gave several months ago, that we thought we could take it, they would be advantageous for us, so we put MEAG on notice about the tender offer. That was part of the litigation, that the settlement did away with the tender offer and instead had this 20% discount if it goes over these $1 billion threshold or exceeds the construction costs over and above $20.5 billion. So that happened, and again, it doesn't really affect us in the cost unless the construction costs exceed those number of thresholds. So that happened, but the big news that happened on October 14th is fuel loading started for the project. That is historic and pivotal for the first nuclear power plant to be built in the United States in the past 3 decades. The fuel has been loaded, and so now the next, I think, 160 to 180 days, they'll be testing for commercial operation, hopefully first quarter of next year for Unit 3. So that was big, big news. As I said, another step forward in getting the energy out of the nuclear power plant that we have the purchase power for, agreement for.
Well, Jody and the rest of the team that's been focused on this has been a long, hard, arduous process that none of us knew where this was heading, and to be able to land this plane is really positive. So thank you and Jay and the team for a tireless effort in this capacity.
Thank you, Bobby, but we're not commercially operational yet, but it is a huge step, and we're very optimistic. It's almost the first time we've been very optimistic that Unit 3 is going to get to a commercial operation for us to be able to get the megawatts that we've contracted for.
The good news about this settlement really is that it is for both Unit 3 and 4. So while Unit 3 may come online and be operational in 6 months or so, Unit 4 still has some work to be done. So we'll stay focused on that and keep on updating you.
And just one other, on the settlement too, we don't lose any energy. It's not a proportionate share concept that the tender offer was. For the tender offer, we would be given up a proportionate share of the cost we didn't pay over and above a certain number. This settlement, we don't lose any of the megawatts. So I think that's a positive thing if the construction cost exceeds.
The big thing is we, for the past few years, are working with MEAG, which was not the case in the past, and building relationships that have been part of the JEA culture. We're rebuilding in all other facets. So I appreciate that's a big step. Instead of having an adversarial role, we have a partner role, which I think is very positive.
Thank you.
Any comments, Jay, before we end the meeting? Our next meeting is January 24th. Any board members have any comments?
Bobby, the only comment I have is that we hear so much about getting non-carbon emitting hour, and obviously Vogel is that. But it is that for 20 years, and our whole plan of where we go for the next 30 years is complicated by that issue hugely. And I know we're looking at it, but I think that's something this board really needs to understand well, is to what is our current thinking on how we're going to transition.
I think coming out of the IRP process, it'd be worth to have a special meeting, Jay, to walk through the different alternatives that we are facing and how we're going to get there, because the way I understand it, John, is we got a short-term issue, a medium-term issue, and a long-term issue that's going to take a lot of capital to do it and do it right. So I think, to me, it's very important to really focus. I think this is going to be one of the biggest decisions that we make as a board, is what do we do short, medium, and long-term?
I agree.
Yeah. Jay, would you have any comments?
So yes, we will work towards what the right way to communicate that over the next few months. And I think you're exactly right. We are celebrating the idea this is going to be commercially operational. But that also starts the clock on the 20-year PPA, and that is 208 megawatts of non-carbon emitting power that is not, that has to be replaced in that 20th year and a day, not 21st year, 20th year and a day. We have to have another plan. I think that the other piece of this is the integrated resource plan does give us the target for where we need to go over 30 years, and we'll have the short-term, midterm, long-term, and then we should be prepared to update and do a new integrated resource plan probably every 3 years to be able to cycle back through. Because even as we look at all the issues, we haven't talked about this a whole lot, but as we look at all the issues, even if we were to comply with and meet some of the standards that some of the stakeholders are asking for, the supply chain constraints, if it's taking us 2 years to get transformers, I don't know what it takes to be able to get a new plant, a new solar panel, those are going to impact us as well. So we're balancing all those things, and it is I think it's the most significant, complex issue we deal with, except for our strategy towards people. Our strategy towards people probably is the most complex and hits everything, and so.
But your strategy on people, I think this board has full confidence in what you're doing.
Right.
What we do here with the complexities of supply chain cost, we're 1% solar, we've got to improve that.
Yes.
So we've got some issues, and Jay, I'd suggest we do a special board meeting just focusing in on the IRP process, and how do we give you enough direction so you can move towards solving some of these goals.
Yes, sir. Sounds good.
Any other comments, Rick, Marty?
Just once again, the team on the whole supply chain issue. It's been a tough one, and I think the team here has done a great job, but we just got to keep rolling with it.
Well, having you on the board and your specialty really helps. It really does. It's a big asset. Like everybody else here, we have a great board. So thank you, everybody, and with that, we'll close the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.